It is Crossfire Thursday here on KTN News, and we're glad to have your company with us this evening. Time for our conversation. I'm joined this evening by CAS Elachi. She's the CAS Public Service as well as Gender. In the middle is we have Mheshimiwa Gladys, Wanga, Wahome woman representative, and next to me is Alice Wahome, who's the Member of Parliament Kandara. Ladies, thank you for being here tonight on Crossfire. It's one ladies edition, all ladies, plus host, I must say, and a good one, isn't it?
Very.
Yeah,
Very
most times, sometimes we criticize for a change. Too many men, males.
So the other day I sent you a text, I said, what the hell is that?
Yes, you did.
Yes.
And sometimes it's not for lack of trying.
I know, you told me. I believe it.
And you do, yeah. And so it's great to have all of you here with me. And so a lot to discuss, a lot of political developments today, yesterday, and I'll begin with you, Honorable Wanga, because you are in a meeting at the Honorable Raila Odinga's home yesterday ahead of the statement that was released by the party. And just from watching first the clip today and hearing him speak, great to see him out and about, great to see that he's tested negative. However, there are concerns that he sounds frail and that perhaps it's too soon for him to be getting out and about already, and that he should rest some more. Just your thoughts on that, because a lot of tweets coming in on that. What do you think?
First of all, Sophia, we thank God that the PM is back on his feet after 3 weeks of really rest. We really thank God, and we thank Kenyans for all their prayers, because there's been a lot of people praying and a lot of messages of goodwill. And you know, part of the recovery process is not just staying in. You know, once in a while you come out like he did today, because there are many concerns, many speculations there and there and so on. So you come out like he did today, and I'm glad that he was strong. Of course, he's still recovering. Yeah. So I think those who are concerned, it's all part of the goodwill and the concern that, you know, Baba must be well.
Yeah.
But I'm sure he is strictly on his doctor's advice, and even his coming out today is part of the recovery process. Yeah. Because sometimes also staying, you know, in isolation is itself problematic. You know, can itself put you down. Right. So I think he did come out, and I'm happy he was strong, and we continue to pray for him for full recovery. But that he's tested negative and now is up and about is a good thing. And for the concern of Kenyans, we also thank them, because they are, even if they say, is Baba coming out too soon, it's all out of concern, you know, it's all out of saying Baba should be well, up and running. But I'm happy that he was out today, yes. That he's strong, that he was able to speak with Kenyans, but I'm sure his doctors continue to advise him on how much he can stay out and how much he needs to continue to rest and recuperate. Yeah. But we really, really are grateful to God that Baba is up, you know, on his feet. Just like many Kenyans are happy, we are happy that he's up after that 3-week
experience and battle
with COVID.
And Honorable Wahome, to hear these reports emerging of President Kenyatta going to Raila's home last evening, that meeting they had, and then today, that what has been described as a show of unity, walkabout in the projects they inspected. There are those who have opined that the president was seeking to avert sort of crisis in the handshake, it falling apart, owing to some of the things and sentiments that have been emerging in recent days from players on both sides. Your thoughts?
Yeah, thank you, Sophia, for having us here. I think I would also want to pass my quick recovery wishes to the Right Honourable Raila Odinga. We wish him well and good health. I'm also happy that I saw him up and about, but and I saw him yesterday and today, and I listened to him this evening before I came here. Yeah. I think it is good that he also went public, that he was unwell with COVID, because obviously it's coming to all of us. But I would kind of say that maybe it was too soon for him to go and inspect the projects, accompany His Excellency the President to inspect the projects. Because also those are activities that we could maybe leave for another day. For me, I think there was a lot of speculation, you know, behind like a week when he was unwell. And therefore today I see an overdrive to kind of deal with those speculations of handshake problems. And yeah, there was a lot of talk. I don't think it was rumors. There was a lot of talk, and the people who fueled the talk is the leadership of the ODM, both in Parliament and elsewhere. You know, they came out and they started saying that BBI can stay, and we can. The SG also said we can use the money to fund the COVID-19, you know, fight.
Yeah.
And I do agree with that kind of statement. Where we are as a country, we are in a deep situation where we need to put all our efforts, our energies, and resources together without all these sideshows that we have had for the last 1 year.
Yeah.
And people are really suffering, and there is death everywhere. And I think that we would have to look very insensitive if we start doing some things that really are not geared towards dealing with the pandemic and economic recovery.
Yeah, and I want us to listen to some of what you've attributed and talked about there about prioritizing COVID-19 pandemic. We had Ojomong as well as Governor Oparanya speaking about that perhaps BBI is not a priority. Now let's listen to them before I go to Honorable Elachi.
You know, the referendum is just like a general election. The expenses involved are heavy, so you have another general election because everybody is voting. Then in another 12 months, you are now going for another election. I don't think with the dates we have, it is going to be tenable.
Kulingana na ile muda ambayo imebakia, lazima sisi pia tubadilishe mbinu zetu kuhakikisha kwamba labda yale ambayo tungepata kwa referendum tunatumia njia nyingine kuzipata.
So, Honorable Elachi, listening to that, and Oparanya, a deputy party leader in ODM, no less, having been part of this process, do you see that the move now by the president yesterday, today, was because that perhaps they were not speaking out of turn or of their own accord, as has been said by some officials in ODM, that perhaps had been propped up to speak for Raila Odinga to cause the reaction we've seen?
Well, first of all, I just want to also thank God for Baba and to say yes, we wish him well as he recovers. And I just want to also say that it's for all of us Kenyans, that we are indeed in a pandemic where we should know, and we don't know when it will end. And therefore, even as political leaders will speak, the first thing we need to ask ourselves, all of us as a country, is we will have to learn to live the way we are being told by the Ministry of Health in terms of our protocols, but we must also start learning how are we going to move forward with all the things that we have, because you cannot come and tell Kenyans that you will not do this, but I don't know how you'll tell us if we get to 2022 and we are still in the pandemic. Are you going to force us to go to an election? So it's something that we have to be very careful as we speak about it, because this is a situation where nobody anticipated. And therefore, if as Kenyans we feel, and I agree, there are priorities, then we must ask ourselves, how are we going to ensure we live the way we are going to 2022, knowing very well. And as I look at the global world, we are moving with this to 2022.
Yeah.
So we must be ready to agree. If indeed there are priorities, then one priority will be, do we stop to go to an election and ensure the economy recovers? Will be good.
But you have said, you have not addressed my question, and we'll come to the point you're making, because there is always the question of that postpone the 2022 elections because the country is facing a crisis.
Yes.
Other countries have gone to elections. The US is one of those in the middle of a pandemic, and others even here in Africa. So are you of that school of thought? And I will take you back to my question that is saying we should not have an election, general election next year because of the pandemic.
Well, if that is what we are thinking, because we are saying, when I listen to all the leaders, they feel fine. A referendum is like an election. And my question now goes, if we go through the pandemic to the end of 2022, are we willing as leaders and politicians, because it's not Kenyans, as politicians, that we will accept that indeed we have to look at our priorities, and we can decide to postpone the elections and see how we recover as a country.
Okay. And you have been a senator before. You understand politics and the law as well. Honorable Wanga, your thoughts on what you're hearing tonight, because then that would also mean BBI, which ODM has been categorical that it must be even fast-tracked by Parliament, and that the handshake is in place. And even that, we should be saying it's not time to talk about BBI, just like Honorable Paranya was talking about there in Ojamong.
Yeah, Sophia, I think from the way I've seen issues of the handshake and the BBI since 2018, there are people who've always said, give them 2 months, give them 3 months. Watachana too, they are looking for positions. If they are not given, watawacha. You know, give them another year, give them, you know. So when we did the first year anniversary, everyone was shocked because everyone was thinking, Siji, this was a Nusumkate government. So first we were being told, no, we want a full loaf, not Nusumkate, and so on and so forth. So there are many vultures who have been standing by, waiting for something to fall so that they can jump on. So I think this is the people who've been, you know, advancing speculation that the handshake is weak, the handshake is wavery, and so on, and the BBI is not going. I've seen the opinions that have been given by my deputy party leader, Governor Paranya. I've seen Governor Ojamong. People are free, by the way, to make their personal views known on a certain matter. For example, I can be sitting here thinking to myself, you know, that maybe, you know, is it now too close? Is it now not time? That is my personal view. The position of the ODM party...
He's a deputy party leader, Honorable Wanga.
I know.
It is easy for, in your capacity as a party member, to say, and a senior leader as well, it's personal opinion, but you know how Kenyans will receive that. And
I know, and that is why I think the party has moved in quickly to state the position of the party on the matter. You know, because there was too much talk that was creating confusion, and this is why the party leader and the party leadership moved ahead to issue a statement on the position of the party on BBI and the position of the party on the issues of the handshake and so on. Yeah. That where we were is where we are. So that when you see somebody speak, even as the public, then you know probably it is not the position of the party at that particular point. So I'm glad that the party's position is now known and understood on the matter. But I would like to say that there are many people, you know, who would like to see the handshake fall apart. Like who? They would like to see, you know, Tanga, even other people hanging around here. They'd like to see many people in town. They want to see the handshake falling apart. But I think you know, you've seen even speculation, you know, now that the handshake is falling apart, there is a perceived alliance here and there. You know, people have said all those things. So what I'd like to say in clear terms is the handshake is firm, because the handshake was never about an election or an event. The handshake was always about how do we bring the entire Kenya together. The BBI was never about some of the things we're talking about. The BBI was about that 9-point agenda that concerns every Kenyan. And even as we talk about COVID is a big challenge. It is a big challenge. So
hold on, as you say, and I'm sorry for interjecting, but on one hand, you have Honorable Orengo, again, a senior ranking member of ODM, talking about this BBI should not be used, and operatives from Harambee House to, you know, tamper with 2022 and succession politics. And Otiende Omolo talking about we can go back to pre-handshake. He even used some Luo right there, which drove the point really home. And then you have the handshake anniversary, the 3rd anniversary, the event that had been touted of leaders not happening. So it's not speculation without cause. There had been pronouncements and events leading to that picture that was painted.
There might be issues, there might be challenges here and there that some leaders speak about, but that does not change the fundamental issue. And the fundamental issue is the handshake between President Uhuru Kenyatta and Right Honorable Raila Odinga. Is it intact? Yes, it is. The other fundamental issue is ODM and its leadership and its membership committed to driving the BBI agenda to the very end? Yes, they are. Okay. There are issues that come up here and there. I mean, those, as you have heard. But when the party speaks, then the party's position is paramount, and it is where things are leading. Yeah, Honorable
Wahome, you had something to say.
Well, I think I would like to see the handshake as a different scenario or event from the BBI, because of course there was handshake. We finished with that, although the friendship is still being nurtured. I can see that, you know, even today. But obviously, you know, I hear Wanga talking with a lot of passion about this thing, and I'm sure she has learned that politics change, and there are things, there were shifts, and for sure the activities of today speak to the problems that were there for the last one month between the handshake partners, or the arrangement of how to implement the BBI. And because the BBI is not a personal thing, it's a constitutional amendment proposal for the country. We even heard them saying that the secretariat has been moved to Harambee House. And these are things that Kenyans should freely speak to and understand if there is a problem. No problem, you know, I mean, these things occur. But I also think that even the timing now, you know, that even at the floor of the House, the reasons that the Majority Leader, Amos Kimunya, was giving, in fact, he was contradicted by Otiede Amoro, who is the Vice Chair, Justice and Legal Affairs, and said the reasons Kimunya is giving, that there were persons or members of parliament who were contacts of some of our colleagues who are unwell with COVID, are not actually the reasons why the joint committee that is dealing with the constitutional amendment bill, or the reasons that he gave were different from what he knew. I think he may have gone further to say why. I guess if you see even the body language, even when the committee came out to speak, they were not well coordinated, because ordinarily the chair would speak the position of the committee. But let's just hope and wish them well. For us, we are where we were, the tanga-tanga that she's referring to, that BBI is not a good thing, including the manner in which the process was carried out. It's hitting walls everywhere, including the courts, because of this thing of like feeling it's one person or two people's affair. You know, amending the constitution in the manner proposed in this bill is not going to be a walk in the park. And the challenges that are there are things that we could foresee, or people foresaw, including the clergy, the religious, the faith-based. I mean, people have spoken, including the civil society. And I don't think they speak because they are waiting for some clamps to fall. You see, what is my friend here talking about? When you are talking about BBI, don't speak as if it is a section of the country that will benefit. Let's speak like it is our thing, and therefore I would want to see. But you say it's not a good thing, but you want it to be our thing? Yeah, I mean, it's a bad thing, so it's not our thing. Because we could make it better if we are properly involved, and inclusivity is one of the 9 points that they talk about. There were issues about inclusivity, about the process, about the legal framework that steered it to where it is. And some of the challenges it's facing in court today is because of lack of legal framework. How did it draw money? Who, you know, it is said to be proposed by His Excellency the President and Raila Odinga. Are these people public? You know, can they be described as popular initiative work? Can it be described? You know, those are the questions being raised. And the 1 month you talked about where there's been uncertainty and hosting several members from your wing of politics, they were welcoming ODM to what you were describing as opposition politics, having before described them of having joined government. I'll get back to you on that, because then now where the conversation of Israel being isolated appears to have shifted with then this show of unity they had today. But an important point that Mheshimiwa Elachi you made earlier, and perhaps to just dissect that a little bit more, a possibility of postponing the election. You are an insider when it comes to the Jubilee administration. You are Jubilee kieleweke, as they'd say, ndani kabisa. So is this a kind of thinking and some of the exploring in as far as going forward, that even, because if you're thinking that way about the general election being postponed, then perhaps BBI is also not a priority for the president?
Well, Wanuna, you know, you asked me a question, and then I asked, and I asked it in a very open way. I said, since leaders are coming out, they say BBI is a referendum, it can be postponed because now we have COVID. So I asked myself, and I asked also Kenyans, are we ready? If we are going to go through COVID to 2022, are we ready to agree it is not a priority because we are still in the pandemic and we have not recovered from our economy and everything that we are going through. It was just a question. But then having said that, let's now go back to the issues that we see. Issues that we see and issues that also government looks at. And I think when you talk about the presidency, it's government. And therefore, if within the presidency, he felt that indeed the country was at the time they were doing the handshake. At that time, nobody predicted we shall have a pandemic or anything. But then, within that, he believed, and we still believe, this is what has kept the country together. That if indeed we were not together, and within this pandemic, I wonder where our country would have been today. And therefore, maybe it was wisdom through God's eyes that Kenya, we are going to go through a process, a very painful process, and we need to be together. We have come, as Gladys say, the 9 points. The 9 points, and I hear my chair, inclusivity and all that. And I think for us, if you ask me now, from the Ministry of Gender, we are asking ourselves, and we have to ensure 2/3 has to be achieved before we go to that 2022. And if Parliament was just to understand that, we would not even be talking about BBI or anything. But we are looking at all the bills that have failed in the House. And we are like, if this is the process that can ensure we go into all that and we achieve as women in this country, then be it. But then, we are not saying that blindly. We are saying knowing there are many other issues that Kenyans are looking at, and even government is looking and wondering.
Yeah, let me ask you this, to the point you've made, that the handshake was important in that it ensured the country held steady at the time. The President's visit to the former Prime Minister's home last night and today's events, is it because there was a sense within ODM and Raila's camp that there's betrayal and that they were ready to skip, or that was the President quickly then rushing to ensure he does not find himself in the position he was in 2017, where he does not have the support of Raila Odinga?
Well, one, the issue of handshake, I've always said, and that is why sometimes, if you talk about it, you wonder what you'll say tomorrow. Because look at how they've talked, then all of a sudden, the President is here, the Prime Minister is here. So it is one topic that remains very interesting, that if you joke with it, you will find an egg on your face as they move on. So I have always said, it is the day the Prime Minister can come out and say, I have now come out. It is the day the President can say that. It is when you can say there is no handshake.
The President cannot afford to leave the handshake, it could be argued. Do you agree with that statement?
Well, I don't agree with that statement in this way. It is two gentlemen who, in this country, we know very well, went to a very, very divisive election. Right. And indeed, they know each of them has a base of support, each of them. Okay. That today, and one is the head of state of this country. Now, to go to the Prime Minister's home can be of many ways. I don't want to take it that he went because there was this and this. No. For me, I believe he went as a friend to see PM, as a friend who has been unwell, but is feeling better, because he would not have just drove. Definitely they've been speaking on phone. Definitely he knows the PM was quarantined. Definitely he even went to, I know today, if you ask PM, he would have wished even to be in the late Magufuli's burial. And who went? And so all those things coming out, he went as a friend to see, this is my brother, he is sick. And when he saw him, he told him, no, look, God is great, you're here, you come out. Because every leader will wonder. It's not just him alone. Right. I know even members of parliament, when they are sick, their own electorate will be wondering, where is Mheshimiwa?
How they do. Yeah. Honorable Wanga, please speak to the point of that perhaps Kenya needs to consider postponing next year's general election, because then we should not be having a BBI conversation as well. Do you see it from where Honorable Elachi says that we have more important issues to address and face as a country as opposed to the politicking?
Yeah, let me first say on the president's visit to Right Honorable Raila Odinga and say, you know, let's not trivialize, you know, the matter. It's these people meet all the time. One day you're seeing them, they're airborne, they're you know, inspecting things in Kisumu, they're in Mombasa, they're here. This is nothing strange. The Prime Minister has been indisposed. He turns negative. The President goes and, you know, visits and to say pole and, you know, I'm glad you're well. It becomes a political issue. No, it's not.
And then the next day they're out and about in light of all that has been happening.
Exactly, and this is not the first time they're out and about. The President goes to, you know, the Right Honorable sometimes is in State House, sometimes they're out in the streets here at night inspecting projects. They have, the handshake is a fundamental, you know, shift on how our politics has always been done. People always said, what does, you know, the president want out of this handshake? What does Raila want out of this handshake? Does he want some positions in government? It turned out no. Does he want, is it about 2022 politics? So far they have not spoken to it. So I think, you know, we're just looking for, you know, things where there are no, where there is none. So let me say that, and then let me come back to the issue of postponement of the elections and so on. From where I sit, as you said correctly, you know, countries have moved on within the pandemic. The United States held its elections in the midst of the raging pandemic. They just changed how they campaigned and moved on. That's why, in my view, we can chew gum and walk at the same time, you know, and climb the stairs at the same time. We can continue the fight against the pandemic while still dealing with our, you know, our electoral issues, while still dealing with the BBI, while still dealing with preparation for the next election, according to the Constitution. I do not think it should be seen that the BBI is now being used to postpone the elections to make some people stay in power for longer. No. The thing is, we can do all these things as we go along, and that's why I'd like to say we can still deal with the issue of the pandemic, how to deal with the issue of vaccines, you know, for Kenyans, shots in the arms of Kenyans, how to deal with, how do we support Kenyans who are in economic distress due to the pandemic, but at the same time still deal with the BBI, because development and politics are one and the same thing. If this country goes into chaos because of a disputed election, it's just as bad, if not worse, than a pandemic. So we can try and sort out all these issues at the same time.
And I'll ask you this, because later we'll speak about just your role as leaders to call government and hold them to account in regarding to cushioning Kenyans with this pandemic. But your statement yesterday as ODM really drilled down on BBI must lead to a referendum. Why did ODM as a party feel the need to emphasize? Was somebody threatening a different route of where BBI would go?
No. What you know, as you had said, there'd been a lot of voices. Some saying that BBI is not a priority. Maybe let's focus on something else. This is why it was important to be clear that BBI, as was envisaged, because even legally looking at the document, the Constitutional Amendment Bill, there is no way of achieving the changes, some of the changes that are within that bill, without a referendum.
But some presidential assent would work.
Yeah, but you see, you can't have both. Legally, you have to, if there is anything within the bill, you know, that requires a referendum, then the entire bill goes to a referendum. You cannot isolate the issues. You cannot isolate the issues. And this, and the process of the BBI process, we have belabored it, you know. And Honorable Alice was here saying, and I'd like to challenge, you know, Honorable Alice. And the entire Tanga crew, that they need to make a decision. They can't have their cake and eat it on the BBI matter. They need to say, we are opposing the BBI for 1, 2, 3 reasons, or we are supporting the BBI for 1, 2, 3 reasons. There's no room for watermeloning in the BBI thing. But what they've decided to do is to watermelon. You know, when it's convenient, they say, let's first focus on, you know, what is pressing for Kenyans, hypocritically so. When it's convenient, they say, oh, you know, the BBI process is changing some things, and we are happy with those things that it is changing. Politically speaking, you must give direction. You must give direction, and perhaps that's why they are not performing very well in by-elections and so on, because Kenyans don't know exactly where they stand on matters as critical as the BBI. At least us, me, I can, if I'm woken up in the middle of the night, I will say the BBI is good.
BBI
we
tosha.
need to take it to the referendum because of A, B, C, D, because we are getting more money to counties, because we are dealing with issues of electoral justice that have been problematic. I can say that. But now this thing of you know, so even the Bible says you shouldn't be warm, you shouldn't be warm.
Is it warm or lukewarm?
That you should decide to be hot or cold, or you'll be thrown out for being lukewarm.
You're about to be thrown out on a Wahome. Do you want to respond to this watermelon and fence-sitting that Tanga has been accused of?
Sophia, let me first say that I took my COVID-19 vaccine this afternoon at 2 p.m. At my own sub-county hospital, which has no bed, no ward, no nothing, which then means if I were to collapse there, there is no ward bed. And we have over 200,000 residents by way of population. And I was among about maybe 100 other people or 200 people who are waiting for the COVID vaccine. And I spoke to the doctor about how much they are receiving, how many doses they are receiving, and he told me they have just about 200 to 300 per day. And every morning they are receiving 1,000 people, especially the elderly, because we have now said those above 58 should actually take the vaccine as a priority. The health workers have not even been covered yet. So I'm speaking to this because I feel that maybe even for me to get it today was a privilege. And how many Kenyans? 48 million Kenyans are waiting for the vaccine. Then we are here talking about issues like BBI or referendum in July. You see, they woke up and after throwing stones and, into the air, you could see fist in the air all over Kibisho, State House, Babu Wino said something. I think it's only Gladys who didn't say something. I think she must be speaking to Baba directly. The others were just observing the body language of other people, and that's why there was a panic in the ODM, and they are the ones who are the cause of all this speculation that came because of the things they said, both on the floor of the House and in barrios and in some other places in their regions. Wanga alluded to the fact that maybe we should take a position.
Say no.
We have never moved from what we said. We said we needed to improve. If there are genuine reasons and areas of the Constitution that we need to look and amend, let's do it properly. Let's not make it a personal thing. Let's make it a Kenyan thing so that you allow an open, candid conversation, discourse within the country, and we have done a constitution before. This thing, all of it, the way it was done is a new thing. Look, Sophia, I can tell you as a lawyer, I'm not a constitutional lawyer, but I can tell you without any fear of contradiction that we are having problems with the BBI because there are people who wanted to use it for political mileage instead of using it for posterity or looking at posterity issues. So when they now come to tell us, people we say, like where all those people around the BBI were hoping to create an energetic movement, another orange or chungwa or something, so that as we move towards 2022, then they will have energized the country towards one direction. In fact, if you put the clips of people like Akina Atwori, Akina Marara in Musadia's home, you will see that they were getting so upset that the president was not moving, especially going to his backyard to whip. In fact, he was asked to whip some of those people who are, there are no school children around in Parliament to be whipped. But the point is that we don't want to split Kenya. And in fact, it's the wish, because Tanga is Deputy President is seen as the head of Tanga. He has said that we do not need to have a contested BBI or referendum process. There are things, especially those things that we could agree.
Then why do we go to elections? Why not say we don't need to have a contested presidential election and say, well, let's sit and agree?
From the beginning, it wasn't our thing. It has been brought.
But that's the essence of democracy. That's the essence of democracy.
No, it's the essence of democracy.
People get to decide.
Sophia, people get to decide. But when people get to decide, the process is as important as the final result. Because, in fact, if the final result can be affected by the process. And this is what is happening right now. Okay. And that's why we are saying, look, open it, let's have a discussion. If I lose on point, then I'll make my decision at the ballot.
And yet,
but nevertheless, what we are saying, this is not a good document to take people for referendum, especially now that, and all the polls,
so will you vote no?
All the polls that are taken, I don't have even to vote, my friend. I mean,
you can,
you can even abstain. So you will not get tanga to give you a no, because that's what they were looking for, so that they can amass the monies and now do campaign, do a campaign with Kenyan taxpayers' money without the process having been tacked properly legally. It will be challenged.
And it's also, is it not because just a referendum as a referendum, but also as a pre-run trial of 2022?
They wanted it to be a pre-run but mainly they wanted to energize the country towards a coalition that will then transform itself to a 2022. And I think they are still on that. However, they will find themselves around the corner alone. I can tell you, the direction this thing is headed. And you know, you had Elachi. It's not by coincidence that she's speaking what she's speaking about 2022. These are things they have been discussing behind the tents, you know, so that, yes, about the tents, you know, there are many tents around and other corners that we could postpone. They imagine now, because this thing is not working around here, that they can now postpone and buy more time. You remember there was even they were looking for a time limit extension or remove of time limit. That one hasn't worked.
Because Honorable Elachi, to the point you alluded to earlier, other than this now conversation of postponing the 2022
so we should postpone. The 2022 is a big thing.
Good.
But let me
just say that. No.
It's elections for the country.
That is where I want politicians to stop confusing.
I didn't address my
Hold on. Let me come to her first. I'll come back to you.
Leaders, politicians, stop confusing Kenyans. Everything is a big thing in this country. Where we have come from was a big thing. Where we are is a big thing. And I have asked. They are the ones who are saying, oh, this one is not big, but this one is big. And I have said, if this one is not big, this one that was going to make the country move to a better way of you managing your 2022 elections so that they are not divisive, so that we don't go into the quagmire we had in 2017, where we are nullified in courts. And trust me, and I say it here today, if we do not reorganize ourselves, if politicians will not look at the country with an eye that is there to save this country, 2022, you think 2017 it will be the same?
So you're saying BBI must pass for there to be peace in this country?
We need peace in this country. We have lost a lot. If they think 2022 is a big thing, and yet you have not rectified the mistakes you have taken through this country, then we are ready for another big mistake. And therefore, we cannot say this one is big and this one is small.
But
each of them, as a country, what we need to ask ourselves is, how do you ensure, even in that 2022, we don't just spend money? Because you'll still spend public resources through the IBC to do all these things.
But here's a question of the contradiction. The contradiction.
Let me just finish, Wanuna.
Yes.
How do we ensure, as a country, we sit down and agree? If indeed we will go through a referendum, we can spend this. and you don't need to spend that money. And rectify more money that you are about to spend in 2022. And they are forgetting they'll even take us to a runoff. With all this that they are doing, we can end up in a runoff. We will spend again a lot of money.
So is it the money or the pandemic that's an issue here?
That is what they need to ask themselves.
But for you, from where you sit?
For me, we must deal with the pandemic, but we have our own pandemic that we have created for many years in our country when we are always in an election. A pandemic that can be also worse than the pandemic.
Because, so briefly, so if you propose that the country ought to consider postponing the 2022 general election because
I didn't say consider. I asked a question, and I want to be very clear.
A question in the line of consideration of that.
Yes, that if politicians are saying, oh, we can postpone this, are you going to reach in 2022 and ask the same question? Because we shall still be in the challenges we are.
Okay.
Yeah. So Sophia, there is no place for postponement of the election.
There isn't.
From where I sit. There is no place and there is no space for postponement of the election.
But there's some quarters that think
we must walk and chew.
Happen.
We must walk and chew gum at the same time.
So we have to do both. We must do them the right way.
Exactly.
So BBI,
we must deal with BBI. We must deal with the pandemic. We must cushion Kenyans. And remember, you know, and even when the pandemic began, Sophia, there were a raft of measures that were proposed by the executive and passed by Parliament to be able to cushion Kenyans, you know, in order for Kenyans not to feel too much the weight of the pandemic.
And now they're not there.
So, you know, let me just come to the issue. We lifted some of them. We lifted some of the tax you know, reliefs that we had given. But by the way, the people at the very bottom, earning 24,000 and below, especially those who are working, their reliefs were not lifted at the time when the reliefs were lifted. I think we still must look, in the face of this third phase of the pandemic, how best to ensure that Kenyans are cushioned. At the same time, the economy does not collapse. So we need austerity as much as we can. So austerity, I mean, where I have a problem is to think that austerity is only the BBI. Yet, people can continue to spend, you know, on every other thing. You know, it's as if to say, if we don't spend anything on the BBI, then we'll have enough money for vaccines, we'll have enough money for austerity, we'll have enough. What I think from where I sit, let us deal with the BBI. Because with elections coming up next year and the issues that we identified in that 9-point agenda not dealt with, let us deal with those, but at the same time, let us also make sure Kenyans are cushioned from the effects of the pandemic. We can do both, and we can do both successfully. What I disagree with is people who do not want to take a position on the BBI. They're neither saying it's good nor saying it's bad. Then, at the same time, when it's convenient, they say, let us look at how we can cushion Kenyans. You know, Kenyans are suffering when it is convenient and populist.
It is still their right
to
take that position.
And yet also, Junet Mohammed, who's a senior leader in ODM, sat right here. It's a point that keeps coming up when I hear that kind of position and sentiment around the BBI, and said BBI is about ODM. So you understand those who say this is a personal thing, this is a clique sort of like conversation going on.
Let me clarify that and say
he was asked here, and
let me say this about that.
And he spoke for himself.
Yeah, and let me say this about that. The BBI is a product of the handshake.
Correct.
Which is that the two leaders looked and said, what could be wrong with our country and how can we correct it? That was the birth of the BBI. Okay. But then it went to the people. It went to the people, and that task force went to all 47 counties and spoke to the people and asked, what do you think about divisive elections? What do you think about shared prosperity? Okay. What do you think about inclusivity? And they put in their points. After coming from the 47 counties, they came back again. We went to Bomas. Then at Bomas, people said, no. Some of our views are still not collected. They went back again round, and they went to KICC and said, if you have any question, come. Then again, people came back. In fact, if there is a process that has been more inclusive than any other, it's the BBI process.
And fair enough, but this was a sentiment he made right here 3 weeks ago, I think, after all of what you've described. However, I want to take this conversation.
I think you need to contextualize the sentiment he made. I think we need to contextualize.
He was challenged on the point by Ken Mijungu, who said, you know, BBI is a national. He said, no, BBI is
it's an ODM.
So that is something that was not a one-off that he said without the context. However, let's take this further to what transpired last night, this morning, because the President Uhuru Kenyatta also had been seen to be supporting the One Kenya alliance. Where does that leave that alliance now? Because there have been issues from where you sit.
Let me just ask you, Sophia.
Yes.
What's the context of that? What's the context of that statement of the president being seen to support the One Kenya alliance?
At least the One Kenya alliance themselves have said that they enjoy the support of the president, and they said that they were choosing to not field candidates in the forthcoming by-elections and support Jubilee. So the context is there.
Yeah. So you want me to react?
So to the point of where that leaves them?
I said there were many things that were happening behind the scenes. For the last 1 month, when the handshake has been shaken.
By what? By what exactly?
Shaken by some of those activities of the by-election that she's referring to, that we lost, Matungu and Kapchai. Of course, they lost both also. And you see, we, as Jubilee, we really didn't have those seats. So for UDA to even receive the votes that we received in those two areas, we actually came close to 20%. Even in a place like Machakos, we are
about
okay.
The crowds.
We are okay with the 20% of the vote that turned out, and because it's an area that we had no candidate, we had not won before. We had done poor, almost less than 10%. In 2017. So
would you work with the One Kenya alliance?
So the One Kenya alliance, no. I think that is an alliance that is headed for the rocks. Because if you look at the people there are people who don't move from their backyard. You know, we've talked the Amani, the Wiper, between Amani and Ford Kenya. You know, it's the same vote you're talking about. So when you go to Rift Valley, where maybe Kanu, Gideon, Kanu is dead in everywhere else. Maybe there is only remaining in Baringo, Kidogo. But even when you saw how Baringo behaved the other day, you have those records here of even voting and
but on
saying a big no. So for me, you're talking about 3 leaders there: Kalonzo, Amani, leader, and Kanu, chairman. If maybe they hope to be endorsed, there is a fight there about the NASA being alive or being dead, and you have seen a lot of talk there. I think they were hoping that this time round, the ODM leader will pick one of those NASA principles and support. Maybe that they could give the deputy president, who is likely to be a presidential candidate, a good run. But I can tell you, any day they will still lose, because our vote is still intact. Jubilee vote will turn to be deputy president's vote, because Uhuru is not running. He's not a competitor of the deputy president. And he has also not said he will not support the deputy president, by the way. So that alliance is not our alliance, and we are not also in having any, I have not heard of any alliance between the ODM leader. There was also a lot of excitement the last 3-4 days. I think the last week that there is a talk between the Honorable Raila Odinga and I think what happened is that I believe the deputy president called
to check on him,
the ODM leader, to check on him, how he was doing, and it's only fair and reasonable. These guys are also friends.
Himself, the deputy president,
and when he was asked a question whether he would be willing to work with him, I think the automatic answer for any Kenyan leader, if you ask me whether I'm willing to work with you, I will say yes. But that doesn't mean we are in the same coalition. Raila and Uhuru are working. They are not in a coalition.
Okay. Honorable Elachi, because it boils down to numbers. So when you hear this, NASA, clearly, they keep saying deathbed. Mudavadi just earlier in the story by Duncan Haimba was talking about politics of deceit that Raila had promised, and now he's moving away, and NASA is there but still not functioning. So when you see all of these groupings and starting to take shape ahead of next year's elections, it boils down to numbers. So at some point we will start seeing that coalescing, and the president appears, some would argue, to be keen on how his succession plays out. Do you think his voice will be an important one for that election?
It is very important.
How so?
Well, one, he will be the president until he hands over to someone. He will want to see that country he's handing over is a country that is stable by the time he's handing over. And therefore, his voice as the head of state will be very key to ensure the peace in the country and how we do the elections. Fine, he might not interfere on who will be the president or what, but he has to make sure that while he's handing over, it is a country that is very stable. It is a country that is moving to its transition in the right way.
And they've kept saying don't hand over to a thief, so...
that is...
We've had him say that. I don't think the vice chair of the party say that as well.
Well, that's the vice chair. But you see, for the head of state, for him, if Kenyans will decide it is Wanuna, then he has to just do the right thing at that time. So what I just want to ask Kenyans is, let us look at, for now, where are we? We are looking at all this, especially as women. Women, we will get lost in all these coalitions. Women, there's time we have to start looking at, yes, we are in political parties, but there are times where you have to look at what is there for the benefit of women. Women who you know very well will be very disadvantaged in all this that is happening. Reasons are, when men come and coalesce and agree, while we see men fight, in the end of the day, when they realize their interest is this, they will sit together and come and gain their interest. But that is what I just want to tell women. We have learned so much in the different coalitions that we have seen, years and years as we go to elections. That is why we find ourselves with always less numbers. Why? The men came, they agreed, and when those coalitions were moved on, you'll find only one woman there, two, none. But this time around, we have to also think for the women of this country and ask ourselves, as the men dodge each other, but then at night you don't know whether they are calling each other, knowing whether they are healthy. You know, the only challenge women face is that we become so emotional with politics. We don't need to be emotional. You don't need to carry it from your heart. You just need to be the same way men are. Today, Jeanette will be here abusing, but tomorrow they are together. Women, we have to start thinking that way, because this is politics, and you need to be on that decision-making table.
And there are no permanent enemies in
politics.
politics.
There are no permanent, and men know how to do it very well. But with women, they carry, they meet you, they think you are the enemy, you are the devil. No, and this is politics.
Yeah. Honorable Wanga, is ODM now at rest following the events of yesterday and today? And I'll keep taking us back to that, the latest developments, in light of, for instance, an interview I had with the Honorable Oburu Odinga, who talked about state machinery being critical. And that was the second time. He'd initially said it in a different function for Raila this time around, and he has declared he will be running for president. He's in contention in the ODM party for the ticket. That the state machinery will be critical for him to clinch the presidency. And after Matungu, there were concerns that that machinery appeared to be turning against. So now is all
it was supporting those ones who won.
It was supporting the ones who won.
Yeah, ODM was in the same.
Yeah, let me because I was in Matungu.
Yeah. ODM
was in the same shoe with the UDA.
With you?
They were actually helping each other against the system. Well, she knows.
That's not true. Let me. You know, UDA wants us to be on the same page. We are not. You know.
You're very happy tonight. You're truly.
It's a new party.
Let me first address. Let me first address the issue of Musalia's statements on the policy of deceit and so on, and the fate of NASA. You know, NASA was a pre-election coalition.
Yeah.
And the pre-election coalition, only to the extent, actually, of the presidential election. Not even the MPs. MPs, all the MPs, MCAs, all the parties were competing. Actually, every party was fielding candidates. So it was a pre-election coalition to the extent of the presidential election. And in pre-election coalitions, you say, if we win, then we will share power in this manner. But if you don't, like we didn't, because if they say, oh, Raila was meant to be president for 5 years and then hand over. So was he president? You know, for those 5 years. So there's nothing to hand over.
He said he was the people's president.
You know, so there was nothing to hand over to the others. So to that extent, the pre-election coalition died at that point. So right now, Musalia has moved on, Kalonzo has moved on, all of them moved on, they've formed another coalition. So there shouldn't be any cries, there shouldn't be any weeping and mourning for, you know, NASA and ODM this, ODM that. What I get shocked at is this one Kenya Alliance about ODM this, ODM that? Or they should focus on how to get their things together and keep, you know, keep consolidating rather than this crying every morning about NASA. NASA is dead.
So state machinery.
There is nothing about NASA that is left. NASA died. NASA died because it was a pre-election coalition for the presidency. On all the other seats, ODM had to struggle for its life, you know, competing. Look at case in point is Langata, a seat that has been held, you know, all the years. But because Wiper had a candidate, ODM had a candidate, Jubilee managed to therefore go through. And that is what ODM faced in all the other constituencies.
So back to my question. For Raila's candidature and seeking the ODM ticket going into 2022 with this latest developments, are you then confident, as had been alluded, that state machinery is what he only needs because he has the numbers, but that has been his undoing in the past?
That's a fair statement. That's a fair statement, that we have gone into elections, and in those elections, Raila Odinga has had numbers that have won those elections. But because of tampering, we have not ascended to the seat of power. And therefore, with partnerships that can get, you know, get us there, we are
but should state machinery be even a factor?
They are waiting to be tampered for.
So is that machinery?
No, with tampering. I think she did.
And I hadn't even finished my point. What I've said is that has been used against. And of course, you know, we are in this country as we are. What should happen and what the BBI is addressing, and the reason I don't know why, you know,
well, I'm for electoral reforms.
Wahome, he keeps on saying, you know, no BBI. Because one of the key issues is how do we get to a point where the person that is elected by the people is the person, that an electoral system that is transparent enough to be able to declare you when you're with the people. And that is why we are very interested in the BBI as far as electoral reforms are concerned. It shouldn't be the case that anybody flips you. But then that has been what has happened. That is the fact. So let us all focus on electoral reforms within the BBI so that we're able to have an IBC that is transparent, that can declare a result as it is. We're able to have election infrastructure that the result of an election reflects the will of the people.
Your thoughts on that?
And in fact, even perceptively, you know, the perception should not always be that it is stolen and so on. The election should be such that the perception is the person who won is the person who was given. And you don't see people complaining, by the way, when elections are free and fair, when people, you know, lose elections, like say in the by-elections, you can see that it's clearly what it was supposed to be.
So to the question perhaps of, as you touch on that, Uhuru's endorsement and who he chooses to support at the time he does, people in your camp, allied to the Deputy President, have constantly reminded him that he had promised to support 10 Uhuru, 10 your Deputy President. Is that why the need for that, if in fact you're saying?
Well, he's the one who said it is for him to either honor or not honor. I think it's a personal decision, and I don't think that he will be held. It really doesn't matter, because eventually he may decide not to or yes to.
And whoever he supports will tilt the scale? I
think whoever he supports may have some advantage, but not necessarily an advantage for winning. It could also be a very negative disadvantage. I don't think it is always that an incumbent, when they support, there is also a lot of baggage with the incumbency. And for me, therefore, those who are struggling for that support. We'll just wait there, sit there, not move. And that's why you hear they are crying, because they are hoping that they can benefit from a certain vote. Let people move and speak to the people and work their way around to sell their manifestos and their ideologies to convince Kenyans. We don't want any system to tamper or interfere with the electoral process. Indeed, even the presidency does not, the president himself cannot choose not to hand over to Raila or to Ruto or to whoever else once the people have decided. You see, that is the funny business the US president was trying to do. It didn't work. Even here, it will not work. If Moi was unable to influence and to actually tamper, I think Kenyans have moved on, and they would want an electoral process that gives the result that reflects the will of the people. And we should, because BBI may not work, and even if it works, it's a constitutional amendment. It's not a legal reform. Of course, it can create a foundation for legal reform for purposes of electoral process. Management of the electoral process, we just need to work on our electoral laws, the code of conduct, regulations, and that is something that Parliament should be seized of now, so that in the event, should we not have a BBI product, then we have managed our affairs. You know, this business of saying, without handshake, the country is unstable. We should have a police force that is able to secure the country. We should have institutions of governance that secure the vote, secure the security, and secure the country. The goodwill of an individual is really sinking sand.
As we bring this to a close, ladies, just your closing remarks on where BBI stands now.
And Sophia, there is nothing like extension of the postponing of elections, because in any event, that is only done by Parliament, and Parliament has no authority to go beyond even 6 months.
And you know the other secret card that has been talked about on extending, quote unquote, the president's term is that card on dissolution of Parliament. I wonder if you have considered that, and that it could play out possibly.
If Parliament is dissolved, Parliament will go to elections.
And the election being tied to that of the president?
It is not necessarily tied to presidency. So and if it is tied, you see, the order talks about dissolution of Parliament. It is not an automatic dissolution of the head of state's office or the presidency. The presidency will serve its term, and then the MPs will go for 5 years.
So BBI...
And you know, that means we would have a different date or different dates for parliamentary elections and county assembly elections, because they are supposed to happen together. But you know, in this case, they would actually not affect, this dissolution would not affect the county assemblies. They would have a different calendar and would have a different calendar.
All right. So I understand we have 2 minutes, so I'll just give each of you closing remarks to the extent of where you think, as ODM talks about fast-tracking BBI, and how fast you think that would be. Honorable Elachi, as you close briefly, each of you perhaps a minute.
Let me not talk about the fast-tracking. Let me just say this. I think as we move forward, and these are our leaders, there is importance of us now sitting and agreeing. Yes, we are in this situation, a situation that every Kenyan is wondering what to do next. But at the same time, as Mheshimiwa Wanga said, we also need to ask ourselves, in that process, are we able as a country to pull ourselves together and ensure that we are moving with everything that we agreed as a country, that this has to move for us to get to even the end of the year is very critical. But at the same time, as Parliament, to sit and start, because as much as they will tell us all these things, I think they need to also tell us, with the pandemic, you can see, we are forced sometimes to close and all that. And as Chair says, the issues of electoral process is very critical. And time is also moving. And we need to see also Parliament now coming up and telling us how are you coming up with an IEBC that will be credible to stand and do everything that we need to see is also very critical.
All right. Thank you, Honorable Wanga.
Yeah, maybe I can close by saying that the BBI is a popular initiative. It's a process by the people. Parliament That has been overwhelmingly endorsed by county assemblies. Parliament needs to do its part so that this process culminates in going back to the people to make a decision on it.
Yeah.
At the same time, as Parliament must think about, together with the executive, how to cushion Kenyans during this pandemic, and most importantly, how do we secure resources to get vaccines so that as many Kenyans as possible can have a shot in their arm of the vaccine. Yeah. So I think those are the aspects that we will be looking at, all the three aspects. The BBI proceeds, Kenyans are cushioned from the effects of the pandemic, and Kenyans have vaccine in their arms. And that way, we have a country that's walking and chewing gum at the same time.
At the same time, finally.
Yeah, with this third phase of COVID-19 pandemic, we have no time, space, energy, or resource for BBI or referendum. That is something that we should forget. I am of the view that it's unfortunate. I think, fortunate, BBI has received an untimely death with this third phase of COVID-19, and rest in peace, because we really don't need that. I believe that going forward, all is not lost, Sophia, because we can still work on the electoral management through the laws that Parliament can actually move very quickly and have some joint committees, both of Senate and Parliament, and deal with the fears. And some fears are actually real, of how electoral process has been mismanaged. But finally, we can also pull out some of the things in the constitutional amendment bill, like the two-third gender issue, and others that don't require, because it's a bundled thing there, where you have things that don't need to go for the referendum. They were put there so that they can be the spice, the icing on the cake, So we can deal with those, and any other thing that will help this country right now deal with COVID-19. I'm of the view that we need beds, we need oxygen, we need all those things that will put this country together. And of course, we need to have money for, we need to cushion Kenyans. They don't have food, they don't have medication. We just have to be sensitive.
All right, thank you very much. Honorable Alice Wahome, Kandara Member of Parliament, Gladys Wanga, Homa Bay woman representative, as well as Beatrice Elachi, who's CS Public Service and Gender. And you for watching Crossfire. Have a blessed evening on behalf of the entire team that made the show possible. We are delighted to have had your company with us this evening. Take care and God bless you.
This is KTN News.